Hi, this is the Be Well with Michelle Greenwell podcast. Our heartwarming conversation is designed to lift you on your wellness journey. Grab your cup of tea and enjoy the podcast. Have you considered how your emotions can be manifesting the health challenges, the aches and complaints that you have, and that they could even be holding you hostage? Einav Avni is an alignment coach and an emotion, body, and belief codes energy healer. And the message she brings to the world is one about personal healing to reduce symptoms naturally. Today, we have a global crisis on our hands with healthcare. 1 in 3 people around the world will suffer from a chronic illness, and it will be the leading cause of death, which is just phenomenal, staggering statistics. It's millions of people. Cardiovascular disease, cancer, respiratory ailments like COPD and asthma, and diabetes are all leading the way in chronic, and I'm going to say it this way, dis-ease and illness. These are considered lifestyle burdens through our diet, activity, and overindulgence. What the statistics don't talk about is the emotional burden our society carries and tries to push down or numb through these actions. Excuse me. Einav provides her clients with a way to discover what's been holding them back from being true to their selves and true to their authentic way of living. She's the winner of the Lifestyle Coach of the Year in 2023 from Corporate Livewire Innovation and Excellence. And she's also the recipient of the Integrative Global Collaborations Award from the Canadian Association of Bioenergetic Wellness Legacy Leader Awards in 2024. It's her collaborative approach to bringing healing together in a special program that we work on called A.M.E for Greatness Project. It includes myself, Anne Smets, and it was the mastermind of Einav. She's been seen on numerous networks and recently created the Art of Healing Cancer Summit with over 45 speakers from around the world sharing their expertise on healing. Today, Einav has joined the show to discuss the power of personal healing as a catalyst for global transformation. And yes, you heard us right. We're going to be exploring how your personal journey of healing can be transformative for others and how we can help create the realization and potential for change within the world. Of course, when we're dealing with chronic illness, there is a resistance to change. And we're going to talk about that because as we explore some of the things happening in our world, we also have a resistance to change. Einav, thank you for coming to the show. And as I'm reading the expertise that you bring in, it's just been so delightful to work with you over this last year, I think it's been, and to really see how your tools shine. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle. I'm excited to be here and I'm excited for this conversation and for all the ripples that it can create in the world.
To start our conversation, we're going to dive into tea. What tea did you bring today?
I got tea today and it's your tea and it's called SoulTEA Harbour. I am very excited about this tea as well.
This one is a connection from the heart to the throat. So finding your true heart's passion or your authentic self, and then leading to vocalizing or being able to express what you want to express. What's the affirmation on the side of it?
The affirmation is that balance and flow is possible when we open to be present for our true heart's desires. Come home to your heart.
Oh, how fitting is that for our conversation? Yes, let go of that resistance to change. Balance and flow. That's perfect. Yeah, that is part of the Harmony Blends series. So for those people who maybe that's something they want to look at, we always talk about a tea in each of the podcasts because it's a way for us to actually create change and start the healing process for you. So while you're listening, we were putting that in place. And that goal or that intention is now there, which is fantastic. I'm going to bring out a tea blend that's brand new to the series. This is called the 1909 First Flight on Baddeck Bay. Baddeck Bay is it's a saltwater waterway leading out to the ocean, but it's more like a lake. And it is a beautiful spot to be here on Cape Breton Island. But it's also where the Silver Dart was first launched to be able to take off as the first motorized air flight. And it was Alexander Graham Bell who brought in all of the aviation people, but also some of the scientists and researchers that he worked with here at Benbria. And he brought them all in to be able to create this flight shortly after the United States had their first flight. Afterwards, Maybelle, his wife, she served a raspberry lemon shrub, which is a vinegar, which I'm just going to say is excellent for digestion and an awesome drink in the summertime. But I wanted to bring it into a tea blend that we could celebrate any time of the year. So this one is done with pu'er. And the pu'er in here is like it's caramelized. It's very soft, and it's a beautiful black tea. So now that you've got the background of this tea, it is the celebration then of, and here's the intention, preparation, belief, and collaboration, providing an aerial focus for success. And I say it that with that emphasis on the aerial. Yes, it was the first flight, but it also is about when we took a higher view to our illnesses and our disease, and we start to look at our healing process. What happens when we start to look at it from the higher perspective than the aches and pains that kind of draw our attention and suck us in? So that's where we're heading today on this podcast. And I want to say cheers, Einav. Thank you for coming. And tea always starts a good conversation.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You get raspberry and then it just goes lemon. It's just so beautiful. All right. Let's dive in. So can you share with our audience your experience with the mindset of someone with a chronic illness?
Yes, absolutely. And straight away is a very good question, actually, because people with chronic conditions, especially people who have been suffering for a while, it's very interesting that when I meet with them, a lot of the time they say, I'm desperate to change. I'm desperate to heal. I can't take it anymore. This thing has been going on for too long. And there is a lot of urgency in their need and wish and want to get better. And this is really interesting for me because, and I'll expand and explain a little bit more about that in a little bit. But it's very interesting, that urgency, and it's like this kind of belief or mindset, I should say. I can't take it anymore. I can't wait anymore. I really need a miracle. I really need someone to come and take it all away. So this is kind of the presenting how people come to me, what they say to me when we meet. I should probably just say that this is interesting because what I already know is that healing, and I was just reading it in the book by Alberto Viveldo the other day, where he says, what is the difference between healing and curing? And he says that curing is really finding a solution for your medical symptoms, but healing is one that will help you to go through your whole lifestyle, basically. And so it's very interesting for me to see or to understand that people that come to me, they really want the cure, whereas I am actually hoping to bring in the healing.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Yes, because when you're going for that aspirin for your headache, you just want the cure.
You do, and that matches very well. People, even when they come for energy healing, it means that they've been to the doctors, they got a diagnosis, potentially. They've been through some sort of, internal conversation that said, this is not the route I need to go down at if I want to heal. And yet when they come to me, they still seem to believe that the body is is a machine, and they don't fully believe that energy healing can actually help in places where conventional medicine could not. So it's when people come to me, I really realize that there's so many different layers and so many beliefs and so many blockages that they come in with, even when they say that they're so desperate for healing. So it's always interesting to kind of try and figure out where exactly they are at, what they're already willing to do to change, what they're already really willing to let go of. So yeah, this discovery, the connection call, the first one is very interesting. And sometimes people say the right things in that first meeting, and then afterwards it turns out that there's a lot more that they haven't said. Yeah, so it's always interesting.
That's always that putting that best face forward, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was talking with one woman, and she said, she told me she has TMS, which is a shortcut for mind body syndrome, which really is what everything is, right? Everything that you're experiencing in the body is mind related. So we can't really set it apart, but people that says that they have TMS, they're the ones that I noticed that, and I stand behind this statement. I noticed that they are the ones that are least willing to let go of the symptoms and the conditions, and they hold on so tight to the problems that it is really challenging. But I met this woman, and she was saying that she has TMS, and but in the way that she spoke, I was like, I feel that you are ready, really ready to change and to heal. But when I met with her, she wasn't able to let go of that. Actually, it's kind of a combination of controlling the fear that holds her back from healing, kind of thing. And at some point, I was like, yeah, yeah,
It's interesting, isn't it? Because when you take and break it down to the cure and the healing piece, and then you talk about healing and you talk about a wellness plan, um, the wellness plan really only is get rid of my pain. It isn't about that whole lifestyle piece. And lifestyle very often ends up being nutrition, because we kind of default to nutrition, and we've forgotten that bodies need to move. They need to not be staring at screens. They need to, go connect with nature, all those things that, animals do. And we've kind of forgotten that we are one of those, and we also need to be engaged in that way. And so then that healing idea, we don't have a reference point for it, really.
exactly. And we're talking really, we are connecting straight to that isolation of, heal me. And actually, of course, I don't heal anyone. I help them heal themselves. That's really what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But when they've already been through so much, and of course they're focusing on the pain and the discomfort, which I completely understand. But what they don't do a lot of the time is say, I can't do it by myself. You clearly have some experience with this. I trust, and and I'm willing to try to let go of all of my fears and inhibitions and stuff like that. Um, but in reality, it's very hard. People, they have so much wanting to heal that they actually interfere. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I notice a lot in a lot of the cases.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I want to take us to the other side of the conversation then,
Mm.
which is in our refusal or our stubbornness or our holding pattern that keeps us in that one spot. How does that impact our world? So, how does that impact? Well, we've got our families around us, our friends, and then we also have our workers, co-workers, um, and then we have larger than that. So, could you maybe talk about by us holding back and not wanting to make that shift, how we're influencing our world?
Absolutely. The when we are in pain, and especially chronic pain. And when I say pain, I also mean discomfort. So even if you don't have pain, but you have discomfort, it's pretty much the same thing. But when you are in this position where something is not right, it's really, you can't really focus on anything else. If you remember back to a day when you have toothache, for example, you really don't care about anything else. It's the only thing you can think about. And of course, when you are in so much pain or discomfort, you retrieve. You're not really fully there. You're constantly in the physical discomfort and sensations. Now, people, of course, if they have to go to work, then sometimes they have to put on a brave face, or they have to kind of park how they really feel so that they won't get sacked and they will still have money at the end of the month. But everything is done around this condition that they're going through. And so it's kind of a double situation here, because not only they're not feeling well, they also they don't feel part of life. So they're not themselves. They're missing out on joy. They can't make plans with friends or family because they never know how they're going to wake up in the morning, and how much pain or how much discomfort they're going to be in. And every day, every moment of the day is so much suffering, and it's really hard to be going through chronic condition. Um, but of course, something that we haven't mentioned really, but I guess it's now a good time as any to mention, which is of course that sometimes it's exactly because of how, life, that we have this what we call secondary gain, and we, not consciously at all, we kind of say, well, I can't be doing with that, so I'd actually be rather, or I'd rather stick with my condition. So
Mhm.
basically, if I have to go to a job that I really don't like, maybe I can't go to the job if I have a condition. And so basically, the problem helps solve a solution, but actually is obviously creating a new problem. So it's all kind of really tangled together in a lot of emotions, a lot of subconscious decisions, a lot of limiting beliefs, a lot of influences, and so many different things. And of course, now when people want to heal, they have to trust that we can unpack it in a way that is gentle and slow enough for them to really take effect of this change.
And that's where I was going to head next, because I was thinking, as people are listening and they're thinking about their aches and complaints, and maybe they're one of those people of having the dis-ease I talked about at the beginning, and then thinking, oh, this is devastating and there's nowhere for me to go. But there is. And there's so many incredible tools that can help peel away the layers of the onion, and the different aspects of why they got where they are. Talk about how you start off a session so that people can get a feel for that.
So I know, and I believe in it, and I come across it all the time, that there is the physical aspect of things, what I call the face value situation, what people see and notice and feel. And there's something beyond that. And I know that nearly everything, underneath all of that, there is an emotion, a trapped emotion, an unprocessed emotion, suppressed emotions, that is basically what is holding us back. So I always say that when we go through conditions, physical condition, health conditions, which are chronic, I should separate between acute and chronic. So anything that is chronic, I know that this is basically the body saying, you're not in the right trajectory. You didn't come to this earth to be mediocre or ordinary, or really not live to your full potential. And if the body, subconscious mind, when they see that we are not operating to our full potential, but actually also, spending time so far away from the trajectory that we are meant to get into, they keep sending us messages. But when we ignore the messages, they say, right, so we have to pause now. And this pause is not really this pause in the sense of getting some sort of a condition, but this is not meant as a life sentence. It's not meant to stay here forever. It really is an opportunity for us to pause and reflect, and to see what is it that I'm doing in my life that is not in alignment with who I am.
Mm.
And so in the conversations that I'm having with people, and I in my work, I have two ways of working with people, either conversations and energy healing or just energy healing. But I believe that the conversations are the most important, because in the conversations, we are able to see where is it that you moved away from alignment and trust, and where did you move into fears, limitations, compromises, and so on. And so when we start unpacking and peeling all of these, not just peeling the onion, when we do all of that, people start to see really very clearly where they start operating from the belief that they have no choice. Maybe they spend years and years getting qualified in something or other, and now they're like, I hate it, but I've spent so much time doing it, I can't not do it. And maybe I'm the sole breadwinner, maybe I have so many dependencies. So they really convince themselves that they have no choice. And so with all that, with the stress, with the frustrations, with the beliefs that there's no way out, all of these things, they really weigh down the body. And in the end, the body says, well, hang on, I can't take it anymore. You really do have to pause and find a way to release some of this stress. Now, sometimes it's current stress, sometimes it's, of course, traumas from years and years ago. But all of these things together, it's like the body at some point comes to a limit and says, right, enough. I just can't do it anymore. And here we are.
So as you're having those conversations, how do you find people open up or shift so that you know when to move from the conversation into some of the tools that will bring balance and flow?
So in everything that I do, I always start in the same kind of conversation, because I want to show people that even though they come here with a physical complaint, I want to show them how it is really about so much more than that. I want them to see how they are operating from fears and compromises, from believing that they're not good enough or believing that they have no choice, and how basically when they get back into that alignment and trust, that things start to fall by the wayside because they get back into that trajectory of where they're meant to be. So my every conversation, when it's session number one, I always talk about the two voices. I actually sometimes I call it entities, but now then I work with entities, I understand that entities is probably not the right description. Voices might also not be exactly the right description, but I want to say that we have two sides. And basically, on the one side, we have the unconscious mind. This is like the soul. It knows everything about us. It knows where we came from. It knows where we're going. It really is not attached to this one physical body. It really knows the whole chain of events. And the unconscious mind really has many jobs. It's responsible for the emotions, the creativity, the feelings, all of that. But the one job that the unconscious mind has is it holds the blueprint of our best version, which is physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So our unconscious mind sits on our shoulder and constantly checking to see what's going on, and is constantly trying to steer us in the right direction of that best version of ourselves. So it knows exactly where we need to go. It knows exactly what we need to do to be absolutely perfect as we are. But the problem is that the opposite side of the unconscious mind is the conscious mind. And that is, of course, the thinking mind. It's everything that is realistic and logical and everything that makes sense and practical and all of that. But it's also the house of our negative self-talk. Now, the negative self-talk is the most unbelievable thing, because it only has one job. And this job is to make sure that you're safe. And so you should do today exactly what you've done yesterday. So if today you get up in the morning and think, right, I'm going to do something that I've never done before, the negative voice is going to say, hang on, you haven't done it before. I can't know if you're going to, can I protect you? Can I preserve you? I'm not sure of that. It's much safer for me to say, no, we're not doing that. We're staying in our comfort zone. And the only way it can do it is by telling us a list of lies that are so realistic and so scary that at the end of it, we say, didn't really want to do it anyway. I'm good. But now what happens is that we have this incredible voice, the unconscious mind, that knows everything about us, and it says, hey, do this. It's going to be fine. Don't worry about anything. Just take the first step. I'll be there to catch you. I'll be there to guide you. I'll be there to create any opportunities and anything that you need. Just take the first step. And on the other hand, we have this huge, very loud, very scary voice that says, absolutely not. You might die. And so now we have a clash. Now, this clash is really this is because when the unconscious mind and the conscious mind, when they are in disagreement, that's when we feel all of this, everything, then basically where disease come from. So when I start the conversations with people, when they hear this, something clicks. And they're like, oh, yes, I'm very familiar with that, with a negative voice, because I listen to it all the time. Now, it's not just about, start your own business and you're going to lose all your money. And, if it was a good idea, someone else would have done it already. Or who do you think you are? You're not very good anyway. You never done anything, that kind of. It's not just that. It's also, very real in terms of how you feel. Oh my God, it must be cancer. I'm going to die. Is it ever going to go away? I've never met anyone who can heal from this. This inner chatter, it's just so loud, and people buy into it because that's really the only thing that because the lies that the negative voice tells us are so realistic. Some people think it's the voice of the intuition. So they listen to it and they are convinced that this is the right thing, and they buy into the fear. So basically, when I meet with people and I tell them this little story, all of a sudden things start to really fall into place, and they can see how actually they have no way of knowing that they're going to fail, or that they're never going to heal, or this is never going to go away. But because of how realistic the lie sounds, they really bought into it. So when we now shift back into the unconscious mind, we start talking about alignment and joy and nature and, starting a band and, doing whatever people want to do. And all of a sudden they can feel that they're no longer operating from, this kind of holding their breath and fear and all of that. All of a sudden they can start breathing, and they can start having different conversations with themselves. And that's the beginning.
Wow. Wow. I'm sure as people are listening, they're hearing themselves in the things that you're describing, because all of us have those pieces. So if they can't get past all of those messages in their head, what kinds of tools do you use to help them shift in that?
But when you say when they can't get past that, do you mean if they listen to this story and they think, actually, I don't have an unconscious mind, or I don't know how to get in touch with it, or does that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is a really big question, actually, because people say, well, I thought my intuition was my negative voice, and now you're telling me it's not. So what is this other voice that you're talking about? And I say, well, basically, find any time in your life when you've done something that was really scary, but you knew that you had to do it anyway. For example, if you were in a job and that was the best job in the world, but it was paying very well and the people were lovely, but after some time you thought, you know what? If I have to do this one more time, there is, I'm not challenged enough. If I have to do it for another month, I'll go nuts. And then you say, okay, I have to find another job. And you think it's really scary because I have no idea what is about to come. And I'm actually going to leave behind something that it's been such an important part of my life, and it's been maybe there for a long time, but I can't do it anymore. And this is the intuition. This is the unconscious mind saying, I've got you. This job, obviously, you outgrown it. But whatever is coming now is bigger and better. And when you trust me, I will put the right things in your path. And so we talk about these kind of decisions. We also learn how to feel it in the body, because really the unconscious mind always brings, expansion and flow, in comparison with the negative voice that brings tightness and constrictions and all of that. So we do all of that. And people, when they start using these words, negative words, unconscious mind, negative voice, sorry, and unconscious mind, they really they connect with it, and they really start to see how and where they're using this voice or that voice. And this is really important, because then we build on top of that. Now, at the end of the conversation, if they chose a conversation and healing, then of course we move on to the energy healing. And that's when I can, using the emotion code, the body code, or the belief code, I connect with the subconscious mind, and I clear things from the energy field that is blocking them. And so for that part, they don't need to, because I'm not talking to the conscious mind, I'm talking to the subconscious mind. It doesn't really matter so much even if they believe in it or don't believe in it, because the subconscious mind, their subconscious mind, knows that I'm here to help. And because it knows that I'm here to help, it cooperates, and it leads me to where I need to go to release the most important things.
Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking about, as people start to make those shifts. So you set up the energy to be different, and you create the space for new things to happen. And then I know, we've had conversations where people fill that in with more that negative talk, or it's like they grab on to the suitcases of bagged experiences that they just can't seem to leave behind. And they pull that in. So can you talk a little bit about that need to almost pull more closer, but in effect, that need to be able to trust and release? Just a little bit more of that section.
Yeah, and this is exactly where I noticed that people with TMS, they don't do that. And this is really, really hard, actually, because they want it so much. They've already done this huge leap of understanding that we are all energy, and that anything that they're experiencing is something to do with blocked energy. And they already know that it's to do with their emotions, but they don't know how to process their emotions. A lot of the time they've made an earlier decision in childhood or so on to not feel emotions, not to go there even. So now it's like they're in two minds. On the one hand, they really want to heal, but on the other hand, they're too much in the details. They're too much in victimhood. They're too much in the nothing is going to help me. I've been through everything. I've tried everything, and that's the thing that is really interesting, because when people say to me, "I already tried that," I'm not doubting it. I'm sure they have tried that, but they've tried on a different energy level. So a really good example is journaling. Now, I believe, and I must admit, I don't journal myself. I don't like it, but I do know. So I have used some journaling in the past, but I do know that when you journal, it's a wonderful tool to really start expressing. Because when you journal, it's not just yesterday I went to the shop and I bought some cheese or whatever. It's not that level of journaling that we're talking about. We're talking about, especially, I say, if people have some trauma, or if they keep being triggered by some other person, a parent, probably most of the time, I say, really use this as a platform to really go to town with how you feel, and talk about the injustice, and talk about, go back to when you were tiny, and if it's a parent, this this anger towards this idea that you didn't look after me, you didn't protect me, you didn't make me feel safe. Whatever it is that was or is your need as a child is obviously still playing at the background. So go to town and write everything that you need to write and let it out. And when you connect with this, when you really connect to this idea that you are this, back to that little child, and you are really talking about things, this is you expressing. So all of these years and years and years of suppressing are now starting to come out. And when you do that, your pain level will come down as well, because you are expressing. Now, people say to me, "Oh, I've tried that, and it didn't work," or it made it worse. That sometimes people say. Then I'm like, okay, you don't see this, but what I'm saying is that you are all in your head. And in your head, nothing ever is going to work when you're in your head. You have to find a way to come down to your heart. Feel the rage, feel the frustration with these two people that brought you to this world. No one asked you, and they did nothing. Maybe not even not keep you safe. Maybe they also added to all of this suffering. So really, I do recommend journaling. I do recommend going to where it all really feels like that way. But the people, like I said, some people say they can't. It's because they're not willing to go to the level where the change can really happen. Now, for them, it's frustrating. It's also frustrating for me because I know that it works. I mean, I've seen it so many times, and people that came to me with incurable, illnesses and so on, and they don't have it anymore because they were willing to go where it needed. Versus these people that come and they're suffering, they're so suffering, and still they're not able to let go. And the problem is that they don't usually they're not usually willing to stay long enough to make that shift, to start trusting. And that's yeah, for me, that's where my heart really breaks, because I'm like, you know, there are no walls. There are no walls. Touch. There are no walls. When you created this, prison, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about too, because when I often ask people, where do they want to go? What do they want to be doing? And I had someone express to me the other day, they couldn't comprehend that because it was a cavern that went from where they were right now to where that future was. So even to take one step forward, which would just be take one step forward, they couldn't do that because it was a cavern that they were going to fall into. So that was a really interesting image for me. But then the other piece was, most of the people, when I'm asking those questions, they have no idea where they would go because they've got so much from behind and all those suitcases that they're carrying that there's no room for a story that is forward. The only room is for the stories that are backwards, and that they can continue to retell, or that they feel they need to hold on to the details of, instead of what are the details of your future? What does the details of next week look like for you? Or if you were to go on a trip, what would you want to be doing? What would you want to see? Those details they can't find because there's too many suitcases in the back of all those vacations that didn't go the way they wanted.
but this is really important. But because we know, right? We know that change, right? Any change is either because you no longer can stand where you are at the moment, or because what is coming up is so exciting that you're willing to try it, right? If neither of this is strong enough, you will stay stuck. And then to add to that, I was talking to someone today, and it was fascinating conversation, because he knew, he said, I know exactly what I need to do to change, and I can't. And the problem is with this case is that when we are working on us on our own, on ourselves, we it's very much a trial and error. So at some point, a lot of us say, well, I know it's not working, but I don't know how to change. I have an idea of what I might need to do, but I don't. Will it work? It's like, me and my weight loss journey. It's always like, I've had so many things that I've tried in the past, and I'm like, now I'm not bothered anymore, because I can't even think, okay, I'm gonna have to go through all of this again and for no results. But this is exactly the point where you do need someone like me, like you, like other people that say together, I know exactly what this journey is going to look like, because I've been through it. I've seen it so many times. Let's do it together. I'm here, lay on me. I'm here with you, and together we can bring you where you need to be. And with my work with the conversations, I think, I mean, so many times in the conversations, me and my clients, we are laughing, right? Because we we are going very deep, but we can still laugh at how we do things, and how, when people realize some of the patterns and the way that they handle things, it is quite funny, actually, really. And so no one can think about a journey of change and think, oh, I'll be laughing and it will be full of joy as I do this. But it is because you're no longer on your own and you are sharing it with someone that can really take you through this journey. So for people that are willing to go through this journey, the transformation is phenomenal. I mean, people say to me, I have your voice in my head, because they always say, what would they now say when I come to this situation, and and they use that all the time, and this is brilliant because I'm there. I am the personal cheerleader, and I'm really always there, always at the end of an email and so on. But it's beautiful because I give them the tools that they use when they're back out in the world. And it's always the case that we work on something and then life will present something that would be a challenge. But then, hey, I know what to do with it. So it's, again, there's no stress. There's no stress. Symptoms are less. It's all connected. So, yes.
And I'm just thinking too, because we were chatting just before we started to record about how when people move forward and that energy is put in place for the openness to be able to have a change happen. But they make the changes, they don't actually remember where they were because it's in flow now. And so you're just in the flow and the rest of it just doesn't really matter. But to them, they think, oh, I haven't changed all that much. But I just wanted to point out, because we started doing, we do measurements before, not body measurements, but measurements of how things are and stress levels, etc., range of flexibility or strength. And then we also have been doing photographs with the Aim for Greatness project. And when we look back at those pictures in 6 months' time, you don't think much has happened because you look at the same face every morning. But then you look back and you realize the pain or the suffering or the gauntness or the tension that's sitting within the face, that, and because we're just looking at the face, not so much necessarily the whole body. And it's just such an incredible transformation. But the person, until they see that picture, is still thinking they're still in the same place, not realizing how much further forward they've actually come.
I know. I always, after healing session, I do a check-in, and I always ask, and I tell people I'm going to ask. I said, what are the positive changes? And it is really interesting that the people who are open to healing and all of that, they always find something, even if it's a small one. I'm feeling more aware of things. I feel light. I feel, curious. Whatever it is, the other people would say, I'm afraid I'm not feeling anything, or actually I'm feeling so much worse. Or the feeling so much worse, I need to say, of course, it's depending on the energy shifting. Sometimes you do feel worse before you feel better, but it is that attitude that sometimes it's funny, because then they come to the next session and they say, well, to be honest, I'm sleeping much better now than I did a few months ago, or I can do these things that I couldn't do before, but they definitely don't. They don't realize it. But I'll give you an example of that. My mum was, she had this really sharp pain at the back of her head, and it would come all of a sudden. It was so strong and so scary that she said, oh, I need to go to the doctor, because it was scary. And it was nearly every day that she had it, and would nearly always wake her up from a sleep and so on. And I said, okay, go to the doctor, but let me walk on you first, if that's okay. She said yes. So I walked on her, and I found it was quite straightforward, actually, because it wasn't at the back of the scalp, but it was something with a tonsil or adenoid or something at the back of the mouth. And I released that. And then a few days later, I said, well, how are you feeling? She says, fine. I was like, what about the pain? She's like, what pain? It was something that was so bothering her that she was just about to go to the doctor. It's not there. She completely forgot about it. They were like,
I had, my mom has been afraid of birds, and my whole childhood, if there were birds anywhere, she'd be inside, doors closed, close the curtains. And so when I was training in Touch for Health, one of the things you could do was eradicate a phobia. So I was like, well, what should I work on? Because I didn't really have one. So I thought, I'll work on my mom's phobia. That'll be great. So I was across the country. So I'm visiting Cape Breton where I live now, but she was at home in Alberta at that time. And so I talked to her on the phone and I said, I was practicing and I used you as an example and I cleared out this phobia. And she said, oh, well, that's interesting. And then she didn't say much, but then she said, your dad and I were shopping and I bought this new table and it has the most incredible bird painted on the top of it. I said, oh yeah, where did you put the table? Oh, in the living room. I said, really? You didn't leave it outside? And she said, no. I said, oh, that's pretty cool. Then the next time she called me, she bought a bird ornament for the yard and it sits out on the grass. And she said, oh, we found this lovely thing and I love the colors and everything. I said, well, what kind of bird is it? So she told me stork or something. And I said, well, that's really interesting. She said, yeah, it's great. And same thing, totally oblivious to the phobia was there, is now gone, and how much she was enjoying birds. And now her yard is full of little ornaments with different kinds of birds, and the windows will have stained glass pieces, and they're birds. And it's just absolutely lovely. But she will say, oh, that fear I had of, and the birds used to dive bomb me. And it was like, yeah, but not anymore. But in the back is that little story, right, that you're telling. Yeah. But it never comes out until, she goes to say something. And then it's like, oh, there was that story. But now the story is really transformed. But it was really interesting, even across space and time. And that's ahead of us doing Zoom calls and healing work during the pandemic, needing to go online in order to reach people. And where we thought that long distance healing was impossible. And now we can see how fast everything can move, even through the distance.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this, actually. I mean, of course, with energy healing that I do, I don't need to, I can be with a person in the room with them, I can be on Zoom, or I can just do it on their behalf, or it can be an animal. I mean, when I was trading, I was working on this elephant in India.
Oh my gosh.
I love elephants. I was very pleased that they said yes, that they allowed me to do this energy healing for the elephant.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I was thinking about I had a couple of ideas. Let me just see if we take our conversation back around to what it means globally. So when somebody has attended some of the sessions with you, they've listened to their story and got an understanding of the repetitiveness and what they're holding on to, and you've been able to energetically shift them and bring them into new spaces. How do they transform in their relationships? Because we usually don't ask that question. We don't say, who are you talking to more? Or have you joined a new group? When we're asking, usually we're back at the same thing they are, which is, has the pain left you? But what have you noticed in the conversations about the way they're interacting in their world?
Yeah, that is a very good question. And it's a phenomenal one, actually. There's two parts. One, if I do energy healing, there is something called cording, from the word cord, like a rope. And cording is basically when two people have an attachment, negative attachment, and they get very irritated with one another, and they really react to the energy of one another. So when I release cording, the transformation is incredible, because people say to me, I couldn't stand having this person in the same room with me, and all of a sudden we're smiling at each other, we're laughing at each other. We really, the transformation is incredible. But what I like to do when I do the conversations is really ask a question. I'll come back to the question in a second. But what people, when we're just doing the conversations, even if without the energy healing, they understand that actually it's never about the other person. It's always really about themselves. And so when they go away with this understanding, there are no more triggers. So when, someone would say, oh, I go to my narcissistic mother or something, all of a sudden they can see that, they can look at it at face value that their mother is really terrible, or they can go inside and understand things about themselves that they were not open to understand before. And all of a sudden, the relationship change because they're not reacting. They're really understanding things completely, completely different. So everything changes. People don't take things so personally anymore. People understand that really things, that trigger them is really just the universe placing all these people as players in the past so that they can make lessons and learning that they couldn't have before. So how does it impact the world? It impacts big time because there's so much new wisdom, patience, understanding, acceptance, and curiosity that people bring that they don't have before. But I would like to share with you the question that I like to ask, because for me it's the most important, really. I always ask it. I also ask it for myself if I find myself triggered by anything. And the thing is that we know that in order for us to grow, we grow from discomfort. We wouldn't just be able to sit on the sofa and grow. It doesn't work that way. So when we get triggered, we want to ask, how come? How come the universe has set the scene in this way for us to learn? What is it? And when we ask this question, how come this is happening for me, or happened to me for me, sorry, back then, what happens is that we park the ego, because now we really want to understand, and then we can see things about ourselves that we couldn't before. And all of a sudden, patterns of years and years and years come forward. Like, I always do this. How come? How come I do this? Okay, what do I believe about myself? What can't I see? Where do I believe that I'm not good enough, or that other people are better, or that other people have, I don't know, better ideas, or whatever jealousy might go on? Where am I operating from victimhood? All of these questions come up. And when you understand how come, really the emotions fall away. And now you're like, okay, now I understand why it needed to happen, because I've learned so much. So these are all adding up. If we, again, talking about chronic conditions or cancer, which I'm very interested in conversations about cancer, it really is about letting go of all of this stress and, he did, she did, they did. It's not about that at all. All of this is just the universe helping you to grow and to move forward. Care to listen and grow. Don't care to listen, stress. It's kind of simple.
For anyone listening that's got a chronic illness that's been holding on for a long time, it's very simple. Oh, but it's true, right? It's true. I think because even, all the tools that I use, simple tools can make huge transformations, and you just have to apply them. And then I guess that other piece that you brought up way back, you have to trust. You have to trust where you want to go. You have to trust that you can transform and that you want to transform.
And that's what I notice a lot of the time when I talk with people with chronic conditions. Again, especially with the MS, there is a lot of resistance to change. There is a lot of attachment to, I've tried everything, I've done everything, it's happening to me, and it's there's a lot of anger that is there in that story. Again, I understand it, but I also know that we can release it. But when I started working with people with cancer, I can see that they're like, teach me, show me, help me to change, because I don't want to be carrying it over. I actually understand that all this cancer is a message, and I understand that if I don't do something different moving forward, I would basically just repeat lifetime of whatever. So I think the conversations are really, really interesting, and I really encourage people to to check in with themselves about this resistance situation. Because if the answer to everything is I've already done that and I've tried everything, you are so deep inside the story and so deep inside of resistance that, yeah, let me tell you, it's not going to work. Sorry. Sorry for the negativity.
But it's true. And I look at, with my story and losing the ability to walk, and not listening to my body cues for a long time, which led to that. But when I look back now, and it's like how many tools, every day is so rich with possibilities, and the little things pop up, but you have all these tools that can help you, or you have the colleagues, or you have the relationships established with those people who can assist you with that healing perspective and help you walk through. Yeah.
But earlier you mentioned, and it's interesting because I remember you saying it for the very first time that we met, about how sometimes people will go into a session with you, and at the end of the session, the pain is gone, or the posture is different, or there's all this really positive transformation. But then when they go back to the normal environment, maybe some other people resistance or negative attitude basically brings everything back.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that time thinking, that was an interesting thing, because I didn't experience that so much. I mean, I have since. I have noticed it since in a few people, but I think that a lot of the time, the people that when they hear the story that I mentioned about the unconscious mind and the negative voice, this is the tool that they use now when they go home and someone starts, really, you're listed in one session and all this kind of thing. They're able now to see actually it's their negative talk, and so there is that shift that they can bring in with them. So I think it's really important to bring that conversation of actually how do you move forward? How do you find the strength or the little thing inside that helps you to carry the change forward? And it is possible. It is possible.
That I'm glad you brought that little piece up, because as we're thinking for season 5 about global transformation, when you take that step forward to go start the healing process for yourself, or continue in the healing process for yourself, we're not thinking about how we're going to change the relationships around us. And some of the people with chronic illness will say, I don't want to change the relationships around me. I don't want to lose anybody. I don't want to gain anybody. And that's an interesting phrase, because if those people are negatively impacting you, and you spending all of your life trying to balance that, that's a lot of effort with no opportunity of looking forward, because you're always responding to the needs of the people around you. And so when we start to think about the global perspective and thinking about how can I enrich the relationship, like you said, if you've got somebody that's nitpicking at you all the time, how could I change for them the way their day goes, that they no longer need to be nitpicking at me? How valuable would that be? How valuable was it to be able to support our moms with some of their challenges, and they move on to do incredible things as a result of that shift? So the selfishness, I'll use that word, of holding ourselves back from healing means we're holding back the people that are connected to us. And is it a good choice for us to hold them back? Or should we be the catalyst?
Exactly. And sometimes people say to me, I would ask them, what is bothering you right now? And they will go into politics. Like, this is really on my mind. And this is a good example, because obviously this is weighing them down, and this is very stressful for a lot of people, and all, really. But the only way that I can answer that is really to say, focus on you. Because when you raise your energy, the energy of those around you is raised as well. And then together it's exactly that ripple effect. And we bring into the global around us, we raise everybody's energy. So we can't sit at home and say, I'm helpless and I can't do anything, because we can look after ourselves. And also, like you say, the fear of change is always greater in our heads than it is when we actually do things. So when we can't imagine having a conversation with someone because we don't know how they're going to respond or react or how they will take it, we have to try it with kindness, with a lot of vulnerability. We can't have these conversations when we can't say, look, I'm in a process of change. If I continue to do what I've always done, I'm not going to get new results. I need to change, and I need you to support me. And yes, a lot of people will find it challenging, but you have a choice, I guess.
We have a choice. And I think back to not being able to walk and being able to rebuild, being able to dance again, being able to do the things that I'm doing. And now, working in the industry, it's like, if I'd held myself back, oh my gosh, what I would have missed. And where would I be? Sitting on a chair, walking with a cane? What would life have been like? And certainly not as rich as and I'm sure you could say the same too, with working through using the tools that you have. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, for me, fear and negative voice was like like my best friend, I think. But I've since found better friends, and yes, absolutely, 100% change from the person I used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, then the relationships that switch around, the relationships with our children. We're not burdening our children with our chronic illness in a way that either they have to tiptoe around us, or they have to be there to care for us, or they have to think about their future and make decisions in a way that they'll be there to care for us. That's a lot of burden for children to bear. And how lovely to see their parent overcome and move forward. And then to be able to be the cheerleader that doesn't have a a cane pulling you back every time they go cheer you on for something, but then say, oh, don't go too far. I'm going to need you. Yeah.
The situation with children is a lot of my clients that have children, it's like it's a real pain point. And but and a real pain point of a lot of suffering and a lot of regret and a lot of sadness around that. And still, some people will use that as the reason to change, and some people will not change despite that.
Yeah.
But yes, it's definitely wider conversations and a lot of openness and trust. We said that before.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, I've got my Harmony coasters, and I always try to pull a coaster to figure out where in the conversation we're going to be, just so I can kind of see where the perspective's going to come from. And I did pull the trust coaster. So it's been sitting here, and we brought it up several times. Trust and transformation, knowing and realizing how easy it is to be pulled down or held back. You cut the cords that bind you to the expectations of others. You free yourself and realize the true power of yourself as a whole. And the arduous work and toil is behind you, with no expectations left for you to fulfill. And as we were talking about those suitcases of baggage that you're dragging along behind you, and you keep dragging and they're very heavy, that can be arduous. It can be an amazing burden. But if there's no expectations that you were supposed to carry the baggage, then how lovely is it to let go of the rope? Just say, I'm done, and then move on. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But it brings, of course, questions of identity levels and the belief systems. That, I mean, today, this conversation I was having, this guy says, he was talking about his girlfriend, and basically that so much of what she's carrying is because of her father. And it's like, does it help you? Do you want it? I mean, again, you don't have to, but we don't really realize that we have a choice. So it's all of these things actually come up in our sessions, and we can really help people see that, you know, it's, you know, when we are focusing on the misery, when we are focusing on the pain, when we are focusing on the discomfort, we get more of that. But when we find a way to, I want to say let go, but I understand that let go is a big word. But when we say, okay, let me just try it, let me be curious for you know, I'm going to try something differently for a couple of days. All of a sudden, we get new results, and we can, you know, that helps us to move forward. And this is where we want to be, because we're not meant to suffer. We're really not meant to suffer. We are meant to learn and grow. Discomfort, yes, sure, but not suffer. So if you're suffering, you're in resistance. You're not in acceptance or flow or curiosity. Yes, you know, we could talk about all of this for a very long time. You know, it's a
It's a big topic because chronic illness is massive, and prescriptions and treatments and all these things that people are doing to cure, they're there, and it's big business. And the opportunity to heal is a really grassroots piece. It's being out in nature, it's being connected to yourself, and really having authentic, wonderful relationships with people, and being joyful in your community. So Einav, how can people connect with you, and what are the different ways that they might be able to interact?
Well, the best way to find me is probably on my website, on untangledhealing.com. Sometimes my H goes elsewhere, but Untangled Healing. That really is the best way. Otherwise, I'm on all, you know, on all social media platforms. But I really like the conversation. So if someone thinking, hey, that resonates, or, you know, let's have a chat, I welcome the chat. I'm not every conversation is a sales conversation, but it's really about, you know, what is it? You know, I really believe that we all, you know, the people that we meet, the people that we connect with, I believe that there is a reason why we connect with these people. So yes, if you have any questions, if you want to ask anything, if you want to try anything, healing and all of that, let's connect.
And you have a newsletter which I adore. So if people are on your website, then they can sign up for your newsletter from there.
Yeah, there's the newsletter, yeah, that I also then turn into a blog. There's the podcast, Healing Conversations, and that brings that. It's a weekly thing. Although we did take a little break for the Cancer Summit, but yeah. So the podcast is a weekly thing, and I think that's mostly it.
And you've got the Cancer Summit,
The Cancer
so
Summit.
people can purchase and gain the wisdom from those 45 speakers. And then the other pieces, they can work with us as a team if they'd like to do the Aim for Greatness project, which is also on your site, so they can find it there. They can find it on my site too, but I'm sending them to you for finding the resources. And so there's just so many ways to interact with you. But I would invite people to really think about checking in with your blog or your newsletter, because you write about really basic concepts in a humorous and light way that gets people just thinking differently. And I so appreciate that about the programming that you do have in place. And as people are thinking about how their lives might be impacting the people around them and holding us in these hard patterns globally, start to think about how could they make that change themselves. And if it starts with a conversation with you to see if this is a right fit, then that's a great step forward for people. So
Yeah, and absolutely. Conversation is nice because it always, you know, brings something that you didn't know before. But I do want to mention the Aim for Greatness project, because I think it's it's a fascinating concept. And I know sometimes as a practitioner, as a soul practitioner, sometimes I would say to my clients, this other practitioner has, you should get a session or two with them. And actually, with the aim for greatness, that's exactly what we do. So when people come, they will walk with each of us for 3 sessions, and of course we muscle test the order of these sessions, and then there is the monthly community meetings as well of various healing and conversations that are taking place. But the uniqueness of this project is that people they interact with us with the 3 different 3 different healing modalities, 3 different approaches, experiences, attitudes from the 3 practitioners, and people feel seen and supported in ways that one practitioner on their own just can't bring. So really, if someone is thinking, is this the right thing for me? Come and have another chat with the 3 of us, with and let's see, really, because it brings results, and we have testimonials and stories of people who walked with us that we couldn't even predicted, at the beginning. It's a really fascinating approach, and I really encourage people to come and have a conversation.
And then that piece too is, for a lot of people, they don't know how to get started. So as you're listening to the podcast today, one is you can have a conversation with Einav about what she does, which is very impactful to get started. But the piece about the Aim for Greatness is, where do you go and what order do you do it in? What's the priority for you personally? And instead of doing the trial and error, hit and miss approach, this takes all of that out, because we know how to set it up so that it's top priority for the needs that you have. And that's an approach too that a lot of times just can't happen when people are trying to find the resources and they're putting their efforts into things that might not be supportive for them at that moment. So that switches things around a bit. So yeah, and then our group gathering every month is completely different based on the needs of what's gone on for the group and the sessions that we've had, and we pull out what we feel is the most important tool for them to move forward next. And that is a huge change, because a lot of people work by themselves to do their healing, but really it is a community piece. And so this gives us a chance to bring everybody together. And they're always, for me, they're always so informative and interesting as to how the conversations go and then what transpires with the session.
Absolutely. Yes. So if people want to do that and join the group, the community groups, once a month, it's a wonderful place to start.
Yeah. Einav, thank you for joining me and shedding a light. And also, for the work that you're doing, how you're transforming the world in the approach you've taken, the collaborations you've done, and my goodness, with that summit, the effort that you put in to make sure people had the tools. So I am so grateful for what you bring to this earth and how you are promoting growth and change. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was wonderful spending this time with you. Thank you.
For those listening, we wish you the very best. And if you have not taken a step forward yet, then we encourage you, don't wait any longer. What are you waiting for? Now's the time, and we have the tools for you. So please take advantage and make a difference. Thanks. Take care. Thank you for listening to Be Well with Dr. Michelle Greenwell. There are a couple of resources I want to just point out. When you go to the website, greenwellcenter.com, you'll have a pop-up window. That pop-up gives you the top 8 easy stress releasers that you can use every day. That's something you can put beside your computer, the bathroom mirror, beside the bedside table. A great resource. Also, my YouTube channel. It is full of playlists with all kinds of different ways that you can activate energy and bring vitality into your day. You can find that when you go to YouTube at Michelle Greenwell. And last, If you're a Linktree person, Linktree, linktr.ee/Greenwell Center. That has all my resources in one spot. Those are for intricate little things that you can't get everywhere. And it's a wonderful way for me to be able to share all the different aspects of the kind of work I do. So thank you for listening. Be sure to drink that tea. And if you want to have the tea blend that was shared in the podcast today, then be sure to check out capebretontea.ca. Have a wonderful day.